Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. Today I want to talk about how, sometimes, in the pursuit of spectacle, logic suffers in cinema. A film and a book are two completely different things. While an author can afford to be detailed and explain everything possible, a director must keep the pace so the audience doesn't get bored. Sometimes directors go too far and, in favor of spectacle, sacrifice important elements of the plot. Let's go through a few examples of this. Number 1. No one will believe you anyway. Wizards in the world of Harry Potter put in a lot of effort to ensure that Muggles don't learn about their existence. Wizards strictly follow the International Statute of Secrecy, erase the memories of witnesses to magic, and hide any traces of spellcasting. But what happens in the adaptation of the Order of the Phoenix? Right after Harry is punished for breaking the law, wizards fly on broomsticks right over London, almost flying through the heads of passers-by. In the book, however, wizards are careful about secrecy, which makes much more sense. "It's a clear night," grumbled Moody, scanning the sky with his magical eye. A bit of cloud cover wouldn't hurt. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Number 2. Wait, can they do that? One of the most absurd moments in The Half-Blood Prince is the burning of the burrow. This is an important place for the Order of the Phoenix, but it turns out that the house has no protection and Death Eaters easily break in. In the end, the scene seems odd, and in the next film, the burrow is fine, as if nothing happened. In the book, Voldemort would have destroyed the house long ago if he couldn't find any protection. Number 3. Smile and wave. Dragons in the Harry Potter world are some of the most dangerous creatures. Their magic is uncontrollable, and they can cause massive damage in the Muggle world. However, in the film adaptation of The Goblet of Fire, during the dragon tournament scene, wizards just sit and watch as Harry deals with an almost invulnerable creature. In the book, the test was strictly controlled, and wizards took measures to prevent any potential disasters. "Don't be afraid," she said. "Hold steady. In case of complications, wizards are on standby." Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Number 4. Heartless. The scene in the Deathly Hallows where Snape arrives at the Potter's house and, seeing Lily's dead body, leaves the child in the ruins seems completely illogical. In the book, Snape was always cruel, but he wouldn't have been heartless enough to leave the child, especially knowing that he was still alive. In the film, however, the directors made him much more cruel than what was intended. "You disgust me," said Dumbledore. Harry had never heard such contempt in his voice. Snape slightly recoiled. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Number 5. Old new character. In the first 2 films, Professor Flitwick appears, but in The Prisoner of Azkaban he's missing, and a new character played by the same actor, Warwick Davis, appears. Later it turns out this is still Flitwick, just with a completely new look. This seems strange because no one explains why his appearance changed so drastically. Number 6. Goodbye, loyalty. One of the most tragic and poignant moments in Harry Potter involves the magical connection between Harry's wand and Voldemort's. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, when Harry's wand unexpectedly turns against him during their duel, the moment is filled with tension. However, in the film, the explanation for this event is stripped down, leaving it as a dramatic twist with little understanding of why the wand behaves the way it does. In the book, the connection between Harry's wand and Voldemort's is not just a random event. It is a magical bond, deep and intricate, formed by the shared core of phoenix feathers. Rowling writes the wands had shared a twin core, so they could not harm one another without causing strange and unpredictable effects. And this explanation gives the event meaning, showing how deeply magic is tied to loyalty, history, and the characters themselves. But in the film, this crucial detail is lost in favor of a quick spectacle. The magical logic is sacrificed for a striking visual, and the emotional weight of the moment is diminished. Number 7. And where are the others? In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, one of the more puzzling moments in the film is Ginny's sudden disappearance during critical moments. Throughout the series, she has been portrayed as a strong and skilled witch, yet when Harry is in the midst of a dangerous confrontation, she simply vanishes. In the book, Ginny is not only a support to Harry, but an active part of the story. She doesn't just disappear, she is right there with her courage and magic, ready to face whatever comes next. Rowling writes, Ginny stood her ground, her wand raised, her heart as set as Harry's. Her absence in the film is jarring because it doesn't align with her character's development. Film's focus on spectacle leads to such oversights where character motivations and logical developments are pushed aside in favor of visual moments. It's as if Ginny's presence was sacrificed for the sake of a quicker narrative, leaving the emotional depth of her character out of the equation. Number 8. A battle without reason. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the battle between Harry, his friends and the Death Eaters is intense and visually stunning. Yet in the film it feels devoid of true motivation. The stakes are high, but the reason behind the fight is blurred. In the book, the battle is not just a fight for survival, it's a fight for freedom, for the lives of their loved ones, and for the future of the wizarding world. As Harry charges into the chaos, J.K. Rowling writes, this was not just about them. This was about every single person who had ever fought and died for what they believed in. The characters are propelled by the weight of their choices, and each spell they cast carries the burden of their cause. But in the movie, the complexity of their motivations is lost, reduced to a series of dramatic explosions and high-speed chases. The emotional depth that made this battle so meaningful in the books is stripped away, and the scene becomes just another visual spectacle. This lack of depth makes the fight feel less urgent. In the book, Harry is not just battling to win, he's fighting to preserve everything he cares about. The film, however, focuses too much on the spectacle, showing Harry and his friends in action, but neglecting the emotional weight behind their actions. In the book, Harry's thoughts are consumed by the desire to protect his friends, to stop Voldemort from destroying everything, and to ensure that the sacrifices of so many have not been in vain. For Dumbledore, for Cedric, for Sirius, Harry thinks, each name a painful reminder of those lost. The film doesn't capture this complexity. Instead, it gives us an exhilarating battle with little emotional grounding. Without the underlying motivation, the fight becomes hollow, reducing a pivotal moment into just another sequence of flashy effects. Number 9. Magic without consequences. In the films, magic often feels like an unstoppable force, a spectacular display of power with little regard for the consequences. Take the scene in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, where the walls of the school are blasted apart by magic. The explosion is massive, yet the environment around it remains intact. The trees stand tall and the rocks stay perfectly in place, as if the magic was contained within the confines of the spell. This spectacle is visually stunning, but it lacks the logic that was so carefully built in the books. In the novel, J.K. Rowling takes the time to explain how such destructive spells can be controlled. The magic is powerful, but it's directed, she writes, showing that it takes great skill to wield such force without causing collateral damage. The films, however, skip these explanations, leaving magic to feel like a mere tool for creating chaos, rather than a force that must be carefully controlled. In the books, the consequences of magic are always present. Whether it's a curse or a charm, magic demands responsibility. When Harry uses Expelliarmus or Sectum Sempra, he doesn't just perform a flashy spell, he feels the weight of its impact. When he accidentally curses Draco Malfoy in The Half-Blood Prince, Harry is horrified by what he's done. He hadn't meant to. It was an accident, Harry thinks. That moment is more than just a fight scene. It's a reminder of how powerful magic can be and how, without care, it can easily spiral out of control. In the films, the stakes of such moments are often blurred. The magic is portrayed as a quick fix to every problem, but the true cost, the responsibility of wielding it, is lost in the rush of dazzling effects. This lack of depth diminishes the significance of magic, turning it from a deeply intricate part of the wizarding world into just another visual flourish. Number 10. Perfect heroes. In the films, the heroes of Harry Potter often seem flawless. They rush in, make quick decisions, and emerge victorious without any real setbacks. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, for example, Harry is portrayed as being confident and determined as he faces the challenges ahead. But in the book, Harry is far from perfect. He struggles with doubts, guilt, and fear. When he confronts Draco Malfoy, his actions are motivated by confusion and uncertainty. J.K. Rowling writes, Harry felt a strange pang of guilt, but he couldn't stop himself. These flaws are a fundamental part of Harry's character, showing that being a hero doesn't mean being infallible. It's about making mistakes, learning, and growing. In the films, however, Harry's flaws are often glossed over in favor of heroic moments that look great on screen. The films favor the image of an idealized hero, but this robs the characters of the depth they possess in the books. Take Hermione Granger, for example. In the books, Hermione is often the voice of reason, but she also struggles with her own sense of perfection. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, she makes a serious mistake by attempting to use the Time Turner to help others without fully understanding the consequences. In the book, we see her deal with the fallout of her actions, but in the film, her mistakes are minimized, making her seem almost perfect. She never quite faces the consequences of her actions, leaving her character less human and more of an idealized version of the brilliant student. This shift toward perfection also affects how the films handle moral choices. In the book, Harry's decisions are often fraught with moral ambiguity. For instance, in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry's impulsive decision to attack Draco Malfoy with the Sectum Sempra curse is a moment of recklessness that weighs heavily on him afterward. He feels the full weight of what he has done. "I didn't mean to," Harry says, "but I did it, didn't I?" This internal struggle is vital to Harry's growth. In the film, however, this moment is glossed over quickly and the consequences are barely explored. The focus shifts from the complexity of Harry's actions to the immediacy of the fight scene. Number 11. The logic of spells. In the films, magic often seems like a quick fix, an easy way to get out of trouble, but in the books it's far more intricate, carefully woven into the fabric of the story. Take Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, for example. In the movie, the spells are quick, flashy, and highly effective, often solving problems without much effort. But in the book, magic isn't just about pointing a wand and saying the right words. It requires concentration, willpower, and sometimes even great personal sacrifice. When Harry uses the spell Expelliarmus against Draco, it's not just a flashy moment, it's a test of his focus, his control, and his belief in himself. Rowling writes, "He didn't have time to think, he just acted." This split-second decision is what makes magic in the books feel real, grounded in the characters' emotions and struggles. In the films, though, magic is a tool that rarely asks for anything in return. It's always there when needed, with little cost or effort. In the book, when Harry and Ron encounter the giant snake in the Chamber of Secrets, they don't simply wave a wand and vanish the creature. They rely on their wits, their determination, and their bond to get through. Harry doesn't just use magic, he learns how to face his fears. In contrast, the movie rushes through the spellcasting, reducing it to quick sequences that remove the sense of danger and consequence. The weight of the magic is lost in the pursuit of spectacle. The difference is clear when you look at the spell-casting moments in the books. In the Goblet of Fire, when Harry is forced to use the Accio charm during the Triwizard Tournament, there's tension. He doesn't know if it will work. He doesn't know if he'll succeed. It's not a simple do or die moment. It's an intense decision that tests his understanding of magic and his own abilities. Rowling carefully constructs each magical challenge, making sure it reflects the hero's growth and struggles. The magic isn't just a shortcut, it's a reflection of the character's journey. The wand moves, but the heart must lead, she might say, hinting that magic without purpose is nothing more than a hollow display. In the film, however, the magic becomes something else. A spectacle to impress, not a challenge to conquer. Take the scene where Harry faces the Hungarian horntail in the Goblet of Fire. In the book, the struggle is filled with internal conflict and hesitation, but the film turns it into an exciting sequence of spells and dodges, making it feel less like a test of character and more like an action scene. The magic in the films becomes more about dazzling visuals than about the effort and personal cost that should come with wielding such power. The result is that magic loses its weight. It's no longer something that requires inner strength, but a mere spectacle for the eyes. Number 12. Emotions following the plot. In the films, emotions often take a back seat to the plot. The camera zooms in, the action builds, and the emotions are simplified into quick, vivid bursts. Take the death of Sirius Black in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, for example. In the book, it's not just a moment, it's a deep, lingering tragedy. Harry's world shatters. He's not just grieving, he's lost someone who was like a father to him. The scene stretches on with Harry feeling his emotions, grappling with disbelief. The grief is raw, personal, and messy. J.K. Rowling writes, "The world had ended, and yet it felt as though it was still spinning." Harry's mind is flooded with questions, regrets, and a burning sense of helplessness. We are inside his head, feeling every ounce of that loss. But in the film, that pain is condensed. The camera zooms in on Harry's face for a brief moment of shock, but the depth of his feelings is glossed over. The scene cuts quickly to the aftermath, and it feels almost as if the event is secondary to the action around it. The film shows us a flash of emotion but never truly lets us dive into Harry's internal battle. The intense grief that lingers in the book, that would have had Harry haunted for days, is reduced to a handful of seconds in the film. The movie simply moves on. The way emotions are handled in the book makes the tragedy stick with you. Harry isn't just upset, he is utterly broken. The way Rowling describes him, we see his entire struggle. He felt as though he was drowning in the weight of his grief. Those words stay with you because they offer a window into Harry's soul. It's not a reaction to an event, it's the feeling of losing something irreplaceable. The film, however, doesn't pause long enough for that grief to truly settle in the viewer's heart. The issue is not that the film ignores emotion, but that it reduces it to moments of fleeting impact. A shot of Harry's face, tears streaming, followed by a dramatic pause. A quick shift to the next scene. The emotional journey is hurried, fleeting, and often lacks the space needed to really digest the weight of a loss. The movie provides an emotional reaction, but it doesn't let that reaction grow into the devastating force it is in the book. The emotional moments in the films feel like fireworks. They flash brightly but quickly disappear. The book, on the other hand, allows grief to burn slowly, smouldering long after the event has passed. Number 13, characters without a backstory. The world of Harry Potter is one where magic and mystery collide, where every spell, every creature, and every enchanted object is given a purpose in the grand narrative. Yet, despite the depth of J.K. Rowling's creation, when it was adapted to film, some characters and their emotional arcs were unfortunately stripped down to mere caricatures. This phenomenon is particularly noticeable when we consider the character of Petunia Dursley, whose role in the films seems to be reduced to that of a strict aunt, with no real emotional depth or internal conflict. The problem here lies in the film's approach to spectacle over logic, choosing a more visually dramatic portrayal while failing to delve into the deeper narrative layers that made Petunia such a compelling and tragic figure in the books. In the books, Petunia Dursley is not just the overbearing aunt who resents Harry. She is a woman plagued by deep-seated fears and insecurities. Her hatred for magic is not merely a superficial dislike. It is the result of years of envy, rejection, and fear. When we first meet her, Petunia is revealed to be someone who once longed to be part of the magical world. She is envious of her sister Lily's abilities and the life she leads in the world of wizards. Yet, it is not just jealousy that fuels her resentment. There is a complex web of emotions tied to her rejection of magic. She blames her sister's magical nature for the rift it caused in their relationship. As the years go on, this resentment grows, morphing into a bitter hatred. In the films, however, Petunia's backstory is almost entirely absent. We are simply presented with a cold, unfeeling woman, an archetype of the evil aunt, without any exploration into her past or her internal struggles. The film version of Petunia fails to show the deep psychological conflict she endures. In the book, Petunia is not merely an antagonist to Harry. She is a tragic figure in her own right. Her fears are born not from malice, but from a lifetime of feeling inferior and unloved. Petunia's bitterness stems from the feeling of being overshadowed by her sister Lily, who had everything Petunia could never have: love, acceptance, and, most notably, magical powers. Petunia never had the comfort of belonging to a community that accepted her for who she was. This is an important detail that is lost in the films, where Petunia's hatred for magic is portrayed as little more than a comical quirk. The lack of emotional depth in Petunia's film portrayal undermines the thematic richness of the books. Her internal struggle with the magical world is not just a matter of personal dislike. It represents a larger theme of exclusion, fear, and societal division. Petunia's rejection of Harry can be seen as a reaction to the overwhelming powerlessness she feels, especially after the loss of her sister. While Petunia outwardly expresses disdain for everything that represents magic, she is secretly consumed with grief and guilt for the sister she could never truly understand. In contrast, the films portray her as little more than a vehicle for showing how cruel the Dursleys are to Harry. While this certainly serves the story, it robs Petunia of any real emotional complexity. What is striking about Petunia's role in the books is that she is not merely a passive participant in Harry's story. Instead, she is deeply connected to the larger narrative in ways that are only hinted at. One of the most poignant moments in the series comes near the end of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, when Petunia hesitates before sending Harry away to safety. The film cuts out the emotional weight of this moment entirely, but in the book, it is a symbol of Petunia's conflict. For the first time, she shows a flicker of understanding about Harry's importance. She grasps the gravity of the situation and for a fleeting moment she almost shows compassion. This is a vital moment for her character, but the film strips it away, leaving Petunia as little more than a cold figure who sends Harry away without a second thought. This tendency to prioritize spectacle over character development is a recurring issue throughout the Harry Potter films. The films, understandably, must condense and streamline the books in order to fit within a limited runtime, but in doing so, they sacrifice the nuanced portrayals of characters that made the books so memorable. While the films excel in creating magical moments, spectacular effects, breathtaking sets, and grand action sequences, they often fail to give the characters the depth they deserve. Petunia Dursley's arc, like many others, is weakened by the absence of these crucial moments of character exploration. Another example of this spectacle-driven storytelling can be found in the character of Ginny Weasley. In the books, Ginny is a strong, independent character with her own motivations, fears, and desires. She is not just Harry's love interest, she is a fully realized person with a rich inner life. However, in the films, Ginny's character is reduced to a background figure who only comes to life when she is needed for a romantic subplot. Her transformation from a shy, awkward girl into a confident and capable young woman is almost entirely glossed over in the films. Her role in Harry's life becomes secondary to the larger action, and her development is rushed. In the books, Ginny's strength is evident long before she and Harry become romantically involved. She plays a crucial role in the fight against Voldemort and is a key member of the resistance against the dark forces. However, in the films, these aspects of her character are barely explored and her emotional journey is lost. Number 14, time for magic. Time in the world of Harry Potter is far from ordinary. It operates under its own set of magical rules that cannot simply be bent or twisted without consequence. Throughout the series, J.K. Rowling crafts a world where time is not a mere illusion, but a powerful force that interacts with fate, free will, and the very fabric of reality. For most of the books, time passes just like it does in the real world, gradually, relentlessly, and without opportunity for reversal. But within the context of the films, time occasionally becomes malleable, subject to the whims of characters with little more than a flick of the wrist or a whisper of incantation. This contrast between the book's deep and cautionary exploration of time and the film's tendency to use it as a mere plot device is most glaringly visible in the use of the time turner. One of the most vivid depictions of time manipulation in the Harry Potter series comes in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. The time turner, a magical object that allows its user to travel back in time, becomes a pivotal plot device. Harry and Hermione use it to go back and rescue Sirius Black and Buckbeak from unjust punishment. On the surface, the scene is straightforward. Harry and Hermione use the time turner to revisit events that have already transpired, making subtle changes to save lives. The visual spectacle is undeniable, twisting, bending, and warping reality into something new. But what is lost in this dramatic sequence is the understanding that time travel, especially the kind that alters reality, should come with far more significant risks and consequences than the film leads us to believe. In the books, time is a force that demands respect, a principle reinforced by Dumbledore's explanation to Harry and Hermione about the nature of the time turner. Dumbledore is wise and old, having lived through countless historical events, and it is his voice that underscores the gravity of tampering with time. He warns Harry and Hermione not to let their actions affect the past too much, because even the slightest change could create disastrous repercussions. This sentiment is encapsulated in his words. "You must be very careful about time travel, Harry. We are not gods. Even with this, you may not always see the results of your actions." These words highlight a profound truth that is often overlooked by the characters themselves, especially when they engage in the impulsive decision to manipulate time for the sake of a good deed. The film adaptation, in comparison, doesn't emphasize the same depth of danger surrounding time travel. The visual representation of time itself, shimmering, bending, and expanding in a flurry of magical sparks, suggests that altering the past is an uncomplicated task. In fact, there's a certain gleefulness to the way the characters interact with time in the movie. The time turner becomes just another magical tool, something that is almost as easily wielded as a wand. The stakes are reduced. What should be a grave responsibility becomes at worst a mild inconvenience. While the scene itself is entertaining and visually engaging, it skims over the weightier implications of playing with time. This disparity between the books and the films speaks to a broader issue. The spectacle of magic often overshadows the underlying logic that governs the magical world. In the films, magic is portrayed with grandeur, a sweeping force that dazzles the audience with its power and allure. It's easy to get caught up in the spectacle, the fantastical creatures, the enchanted objects, the dazzling spells. But as Rowling consistently reminds us in the books, this magic is not to be taken lightly. It is a force that exists within strict boundaries, shaped by laws that are as unyielding as the flow of time itself. The films, in their pursuit of visual spectacle, sometimes dilute these laws, trading the complexity and depth of the magical world for the immediate satisfaction of a visually appealing narrative. One cannot help but think of other instances in the series where magic defies its own rules for the sake of spectacle. Consider the final battle between Harry and Voldemort in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. In the book, the duel is a moment of intense emotional and psychological depth. It is not just about who has the stronger magic, but about the choices Harry makes and the understanding that he does not need to be the most powerful wizard to defeat Voldemort. Yet, in the film, the battle is reduced to a series of fiery, explosive encounters, pure spectacle, with little of the internal struggle and philosophical weight that the book so intricately conveys. This tendency to favor spectacle over logic is not necessarily a flaw in the films. It is part of the challenge of translating a deeply layered book series into a visual medium. But it does raise questions about the balance between maintaining the integrity of the source material and crafting something that will engage the audience on a more immediate, visceral level. In the case of time manipulation, the film's presentation of the time turner's magic as a relatively simple tool for solving problems creates a disconnect between the serious themes of fate, destiny, and consequence that are so central to the fictional books. Number 15, The Fight with Voldemort. The battle between Harry Potter and Voldemort is undoubtedly the most iconic and crucial element of J.K. Rowling's beloved series. On the surface, it appears to be a simple tale of good versus evil, but when you look closer, the conflict is far more complex, nuanced, and intellectually intricate. The most striking contrast between the book and film adaptations of Harry Potter lies in the way this battle is portrayed, particularly in the films where spectacle often takes precedence over the careful strategies, risks, and intellectual warfare that defined the battles in the books. In the films, the final confrontation between Harry and Voldemort in Deathly Hallows is full of dazzling effects. Epic wand battles, explosions, and dramatic chases. These moments are visually stunning, designed to captivate the audience and keep the adrenaline high. Yet this spectacle obscures the deeper layers of the fight that Rowling masterfully wove into her narrative. The physical confrontation, while exciting, fails to capture the subtlety, intelligence, and strategic thinking that define the real battle between the two. In the books, their battle was never purely about brute force, but about outsmarting each other, outmaneuvering each other's plans, and navigating the morally grey areas of life. Take, for example, the moment in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows when Harry uses a simple charm to mislead Voldemort about his location. This moment, though brief, is a masterstroke of strategic thinking. Harry knows that Voldemort, in his arrogance and obsession with control, believes he can track Harry's every move. By hiding his presence in the most ordinary of ways, using the simplest of charms, Harry turns the tables on Voldemort. It's a moment of quiet brilliance that is carefully constructed in the book. The psychological depth of the battle is evident. Voldemort is not merely up against a young wizard, but against someone who understands his opponent on a deeply personal level, someone who can think beyond the immediate fight and recognize that Voldemort's obsession with omnipotence can be his downfall. This particular moment is unfortunately sidelined in the film. What was once a brilliant cerebral tactic becomes just another piece of action filler. The film focuses on the visual spectacle of wands clashing, but the underlying tactical brilliance of Harry's decision is lost. Instead of reflecting the intellectual nature of the conflict, the film version reduces it to a mere plot device to move the story along. This shift in focus highlights the larger issue with the portrayal of the Pate. Battle, the loss of complexity in favor of visual excitement. In the book, Harry's battle against Voldemort is also an intellectual one. It's not just about the spells they cast at each other, but about understanding the true nature of Voldemort's power and the deeper weaknesses he carries. From the very beginning of the series, Harry understands that defeating Voldemort will require more than just physical strength. It will require understanding, cleverness, and strategy. Harry's journey is not just about learning magic, but about learning how to think like Voldemort, how to anticipate his moves, and how to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Take, for instance, the early encounters between Harry and Voldemort. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, when Harry first faces the Dark Wizard in the form of Lord Voldemort on the back of Professor Quirrell's head, the encounter isn't simply about Harry fighting him head-on, it's about Harry's ability to adapt and his understanding of what Voldemort fears: love. Voldemort's arrogance, his disregard for the power of love, blinds him to the very thing that makes Harry so formidable. Harry's victory is not through his skill with magic, but through his ability to understand Voldemort's flaws and exploit them. This moment is a deep intellectual victory that is overshadowed in the films by the visual dramatization of their encounter. Similarly, when Harry learns about the Horcruxes in The Half-Blood Prince, the battle intensifies not through grand battles, but through information and strategy. The idea of destroying Voldemort's Horcruxes is a tactic based on cleverness and patience. It is a long game that requires a great deal of research, planning, and, importantly, sacrifice. The physical destruction of the Horcruxes is only a small part of the process. The real challenge lies in finding them, understanding their significance, and making the morally difficult decision to destroy them, knowing that doing so could cost lives, including Harry's own. In the films, however, the significance of the Horcruxes is not as carefully examined. The focus shifts to the action, the battles in the Ministry of Magic, the chase for the Horcrux in Deathly Hallows, and the visual climax of the final battle at Hogwarts. While these moments are visually exciting, they fail to capture the profound moral and intellectual complexity of the choices Harry must make. In the books, Harry struggles with the notion of killing, the risks of making the wrong move, and the uncertainty of whether he is doing the right thing. His battle against Voldemort is not only about magic, but also about grappling with his own morals, choices, and responsibilities as the true hero. Number 16, Resurrection and its Significance. In the world of Harry Potter, resurrection holds a profound significance that stretches far beyond the mere act of bringing someone back to life. It is a recurring theme that questions the value of life, the price of magic, and the consequences of tampering with forces beyond one's control. From the dark depths of deathly curses to the metaphysical undertones that accompany the return of the dead, the idea of resurrection is woven intricately into the narrative fabric of J.K. Rowling's world. But as we delve deeper into this concept, it becomes clear that the films, in their quest for visual spectacle, reduce the philosophical depth of resurrection to mere cinematic thrills, losing the essence of the moral quandary that was so masterfully crafted in the books. One of the clearest examples of resurrection's philosophical weight can be found in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows during the scene with the Resurrection Stone. Harry Potter comes to possess one of the three Deathly Hallows, the Resurrection Stone, which has the power to bring back the dead, but not in the way one might imagine. The dead are not truly revived, rather they exist as shadows of their former selves, echoing only the essence of the person they once were. The ghostly figures are not real, and their interaction with the living is limited and transient. For Harry, this is an uncomfortable realization. In a moment of personal crisis, when he is struggling with the weight of his fate, Harry uses the stone to summon his loved ones, his parents, Sirius Black and Remus Lupin, hoping to seek their guidance. Yet what he encounters is not a joyous reunion, but a stark reminder of the irreversible nature of death. The scenes surrounding the Resurrection Stone exemplify the complexity of resurrection. Harry's initial desire for closure, to speak with the lost figures from his past, is contrasted with the realization that resurrection, even in a magical world, comes with a cost. The characters Harry summons are mere shadows of their former selves, unable to provide the solace he seeks. This creates a tension between the magic of the stone and the deeper message about life, loss, and the finality of death. As Dumbledore explains to Harry, "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living and, above all, those who live without love." The stone's magic may offer a momentary comfort, but it cannot restore what has truly been lost. It is a powerful reminder of the dangers of wanting to undo the irreversible. However, in the film adaptation of Deathly Hallows, the moment of resurrection loses much of its emotional and philosophical weight. The scene is treated as a visual spectacle, with the ghostly figures of Harry's loved ones appearing in an almost ethereal, dramatic fashion. The gravity of Harry's realization that he is speaking to mere reflections of the people he once knew is drowned out by the cinematic grandeur. The visual effects take center stage, overshadowing the profound emotional undercurrent of the scene. In the book, Harry's encounter with his parents is deeply sorrowful, laden with a sense of loss and acceptance. In the film, however, it feels more like a passing moment, a fleeting illusion of closure, rather than a profound reckoning with death. This shift in focus from philosophy to spectacle is a consistent issue throughout the film series when dealing with resurrection and death. A prime example is the resurrection of Lord Voldemort. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Voldemort's return to full power after being brought back to life through the dark magic of a ritual is depicted as a moment of terrifying grandeur. The ritual, performed using Harry's blood, is violent and horrific, but it is also a visual spectacle. The ritual's dark magic is shown in a series of impressive special effects, culminating in a rebirth that marks Voldemort's return to the world of the living. Yet the significance of this resurrection is far deeper in the books than the films allow us to appreciate. In the book, Voldemort's return is not merely about his physical resurrection, it is about his spiritual resurrection as well. When he returns, he is not just seeking power, he is seeking to reassert control over a world that rejected him. The ritual is not only an attempt to reclaim his body, but also an attempt to regain his lost sense of self, his identity as the Dark Lord who once ruled with fear and violence. The use of Harry's blood, which ties their fates together, is also a metaphor for the cyclical nature of death and rebirth in their conflict. Voldemort's resurrection represents a dark triumph over death, but it is a hollow victory, as he is left forever disconnected from the life he once knew. His return is marked by pain, disfigurement, and an unquenchable hunger for power. In contrast, the film's treatment of Voldemort's return is reduced to a grotesque display of dark magic, emphasizing the shock value of the moment without fully exploring the implications of resurrection. The emotional and psychological aspects of Voldemort's resurrection are glossed over in favor of visual effects. The result is that the moral questions surrounding his return, the cost of resurrection, the lengths to which one will go to avoid death, and the consequences of meddling with forces beyond comprehension are largely lost in the translation from book to film. Furthermore, the resurrection of other characters, such as Sirius Black, is similarly treated with less emotional depth in the films. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry's grief over Sirius's death is profound, and the shadowy vision of Sirius in the Vale at the Department of Mysteries represents the elusive nature of death. In the book, this death is irrevocable, a permanent loss that forces Harry to confront the harsh reality of the world he lives in. Yet in the film, this death is portrayed with much less nuance, with Sirius's passing becoming little more than a tragic moment for Harry, rather than an exploration of the deep emotional impact that death has on the characters. The absence of this philosophical depth in the films is not limited to the deaths and resurrections of major characters. Throughout the series, the films often reduce the complexity of life and death to simple plot devices. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, for instance, the death of Dumbledore is treated as a shock moment rather than a meaningful exploration of sacrifice and mortality. The emotional weight of the event is minimized, and the film focuses more on the action surrounding Dumbledore's death rather than its significance in the larger narrative of Harry's journey. In the world of Harry Potter, resurrection is a potent symbol of the limitations of magic. It is not about the literal act of returning to life, but about the moral and philosophical questions that arise when one attempts to do so. The books emphasize the inevitability of death, the dangers of tampering with it, and the need to accept loss. The films, while visually stunning, often miss these deeper messages in favor of spectacle. In doing so, they turn the powerful concept of resurrection into a mere plot device, stripping it of the complexity that makes it such a compelling theme in the books. Resurrection in Harry Potter is not a simple reversal of death, but a profound commentary on the fragility of life and the consequences of attempting to defy it. The books challenge the reader to consider the true cost of resurrection, while the films, though entertaining, often miss the deeper implications of this theme. In the end, the contrast between the book's philosophical richness and the film's visual spectacle underscores the difference between storytelling that engages with the complexities of life and death and entertainment that seeks only to dazzle. Number 17. Artifacts and their role. Magical artifacts in the world of Harry Potter serve as much more than mere tools for accomplishing feats of magic. They carry deep symbolic weight, often embodying powerful forces of magic that shape the world around them. These items play a crucial role in both the plot and the character's development, yet their full significance is often overshadowed in the films. The books, with their detailed narrative style, allow readers to understand not just the use of these items, but also their deeper meaning, an aspect that is frequently simplified or glossed over in their cinematic counterparts. In particular, the Goblet of Fire serves as a prime example of how these magical artifacts are central to the story, yet in the film, their true potential is lost. One of the most powerful and intricate magical artifacts in Goblet of Fire is the Triwizard Cup itself. In the book, it is not merely a prize awarded to the victor of the Triwizard tournament. It is a symbol of both victory and betrayal. The cup is an ancient magical object imbued with powerful enchantments. It's not just a simple trophy, it's a binding contract between the magical schools, an object that enforces the rules of the competition and even carries a dangerous secret. The cup's role in the book is significant because it becomes a pivotal tool in the plot, setting the stage for Voldemort's return. When Harry unexpectedly touches the cup, it is revealed to be a portkey, a powerful, magical item that teleports him to a graveyard where Voldemort is waiting. This moment in the book is laden with tension, and the significance of the cup is highlighted through the dangerous magic embedded within it. In the film adaptation, however, the Triwizard Cup is given far less screen time. It is presented mostly as a decorative item, with little explanation of its deeper connection to the magical world and its complex role in the plot. The moment when Harry touches the cup feels rushed, and the viewer does not fully appreciate the danger or the power that the artifact holds. The film reduces it to a mere prop, stripping it of the mystical qualities it possesses in the books. The significance of the portkey and its connection to the dark magic surrounding Voldemort's return is glossed over, making it appear as though Harry's journey to the graveyard happens almost by chance, instead of by the deliberate design of dark forces. Another example of the diminishing role of magical artifacts in the films is the importance of the various items used by the champions during the Triwizard tournament. The book describes how each of the champions receives unique magical assistance. For instance, Harry receives help from the golden egg given to him by the dragon in the first task, and later he is guided by the merpeople and other magical beings when he dives into the lake in the second task. These items and experiences are not just plot devices, they are symbolic representations of Harry's connection to the magical world, his growth as a wizard, and his moral compass. In the films, however, these artifacts and the trials themselves are stripped of much of their magic. The golden egg, which is meant to be a mysterious and important clue to the second task, is reduced to just another object that Harry casually solves. The merpeople, who represent a deep and ancient part of the magical world, are relegated to background characters in the underwater task, reducing the gravity of the task and its symbolic significance. The artifacts in the film are often treated as tools to move the plot along, rather than as magical objects that represent deeper themes about power, growth, and the balance of good and evil in the wizarding world. The film adaptations often fail to convey the deeper, more philosophical implications of these magical objects, as seen with the invisibility cloak, another key artifact in the series. In the books, Harry's cloak is a gift passed down from his father, an object that links him to his family and his past. The cloak is more than just a tool for invisibility. It symbolizes the legacy of the Potter family and their connection to the fight against dark forces. In the films, however, the cloak is often used in a straightforward, almost casual manner, reducing its emotional resonance. The cloak's significance as a symbol of protection, a reminder of Harry's parents, is never fully explored on screen. In the book, the cloak is an item Harry cherishes, and its magical properties are a source of comfort and strength. But in the film, it serves more as a convenient plot device, used to hide Harry from danger, without much thought given to its deeper emotional or symbolic role. Even the Dark Mark, which is one of the most terrifying and powerful symbols of Voldemort's reign, loses its true meaning in the films. In the books, the Dark Mark is a symbol of fear and death, an unmistakable sign of the Dark Lord's return to power. It is a mark that carries with it a heavy, almost unbearable weight of loss and death. In the films, however, the dark mark is often depicted as a simple symbol of evil, devoid of the deeper psychological horror it represents. The book provides a much more detailed exploration of how the dark mark affects people emotionally, especially those who are directly connected to the Dark Lord's past. It is not just a mark of allegiance, it is a reminder of the darkest times in wizarding history, and the fear it instills is a powerful motivator for the characters. Perhaps one of the clearest examples of how the films fail to do justice to the significance of magical artifacts is the fate of the locket that once belonged to Salazar Slytherin, a key Horcrux. In the book, the locket is a symbol of both the twisted legacy of Slytherin and Voldemort's obsessive need for control. The locket's journey through the story is fraught with symbolism, as it represents both the power of the Dark Lord and the corruption of those who seek to control it. In the film, however, the locket is treated merely as another object in the quest to destroy Voldemort's Horcruxes. Its deeper connections to the past are largely ignored, and its emotional weight is lost in the rush to focus on action. The films reduce this powerful symbol to a mere plot device, and in doing so they miss the opportunity to explore its deeper meaning. The differences between the treatment of magical artifacts in the books and films underscore the larger thematic contrast between spectacle and logic in the adaptation process. In the books, J.K. Rowling takes great care to imbue each artifact with its own history and purpose, weaving them into the narrative to deepen the reader's understanding of the magical world. These items are not just tools, they are conduits for the underlying themes of the series, whether they represent love, loss, power, or fear. However, in the films, the focus shifts to visual spectacle, often at the expense of the artifact's emotional or thematic weight. This shift is not necessarily a bad thing, as the films are designed to entertain and captivate a wide audience, but it does come at the cost of the subtle, intricate storytelling that the books are able to achieve. Ultimately, magical artifacts in the Harry Potter series serve as symbols that represent key elements of the story's themes, from the battle between good and evil to the legacy of family and love. In the books, these objects carry deep emotional and symbolic resonance, allowing readers to explore the magic behind the magic. In the films, however, they are often reduced to mere plot devices, losing much of the depth and significance that make them so compelling in the original text. The difference between spectacle and logic in the adaptation process reveals the delicate balance between storytelling and cinematic interpretation, and it highlights the importance of understanding the deeper layers of meaning in the magical world of Harry Potter. Number 18. Lucius Malfoy, the Forgotten Father. Lucius Malfoy, a character whose dark cloak seems to blend seamlessly into the shadowed corners of J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series is much more than the sneering aristocrat he often appears to be in the films. In the novels, his character is imbued with a deep internal struggle that is tragically sidelined in the cinematic adaptations. The films, bound by their need to prioritize spectacle and action, miss an opportunity to fully explore the complexities of Malfoy's character. While his outward appearance in both mediums remains consistent, the Harry Potter books offer a much richer portrayal, one where we see a man caught between family loyalty, moral turmoil, and fear of his own eventual downfall. In the films, Lucius Malfoy is often painted with a broad brush. He is the quintessential villain, a pure-blood wizard who loathes muggles and uses his wealth and influence to support Voldemort's cause. He is shown as a man of arrogance, pride, and unyielding loyalty to the Dark Lord. However, this superficial depiction fails to delve into the emotional and psychological conflict that defines him in the books. One of the most glaring differences between the films and the books is the portrayal of his character arc, particularly his internal transformation as he grapples with the consequences of his choices. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Lucius's gradual unraveling is more than just the physical decay of a man who has placed all his faith in a dark ideology. Lucius's disillusionment with Voldemort is not immediate, nor is it purely based on fear. There is a genuine internal conflict within him, which, when examined closely, reveals the complexity of his character. His son Draco plays a crucial role in this transformation. Lucius's love for Draco, a love that is often hidden beneath layers of pride and coldness, becomes the driving force behind his eventual shift in loyalties. The turning point in Lucius's journey is marked by his awareness of the danger that his son faces. In the film adaptations, Draco's mission to kill Dumbledore is portrayed as an inevitable step in his development as a Malfoy, a member of a proud family with a long history of serving Voldemort. However, in the books, Lucius's reaction to Draco's predicament is far more telling. Lucius knows that Draco is not only risking his life, but also his soul. The weight of this realization hits him with a force he cannot ignore. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, we see him begin to question the worth of his allegiance to Voldemort. The love he has for Draco becomes a central aspect of his internal turmoil, forcing him to confront the man he has become. This personal conflict is further explored in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Lucius's actions during the Battle of Hogwarts reflect a man who is finally beginning to break free from the chains of his past. Unlike the films, where his participation in the battle is almost incidental, the books highlight his hesitation. Lucius stands on the precipice of his past and future, unable to reconcile the family values he holds dear with the terror of Voldemort's regime. His hesitation on the battlefield, as well as his decision to quietly abandon the Death Eaters, speaks volumes about his growing disillusionment. His eventual decision to defect is not a sudden change of heart, but the culmination of years of fear, guilt, and love for his family. The film versions of Harry Potter simplify Lucius's character, reducing him to a mere foot soldier in the battle between good and evil. He is little more than a member of the Dark Lord's inner circle, with his motivations often obscured by the demands of action and spectacle. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Lucius's appearance is brief, and his role in the story is largely reduced to that of a provocateur. His attack on Harry is swift and his disdain for the boy is evident, but there is little insight into why he harbors such animosity. This missed opportunity leaves the audience with little understanding of the complexities of his character. In contrast, the books paint a more vivid picture of the complexities underlying Lucius's anger. His hatred for Harry is not just a matter of ideology, but also a reflection of the bitter pride he feels as a result of his family's long history of power and prestige. Lucius's personal failure to preserve that legacy is something that haunts him throughout the series. His disdain for Harry can be seen as an extension of his own insecurities. In the films, these layers are obscured by the demands of the plot, which focuses primarily on the physical confrontations and dramatic moments, rather than exploring the psychological depth of the characters involved. Perhaps the most telling difference between the books and the films is the portrayal of Lucius's relationship with his wife, Narcissa. While the films show them as a typical aristocratic couple, the books reveal a more complicated dynamic. Narcissa, although deeply devoted to her family, has her own reservations about Voldemort's reign. In the films, her brief moment of defiance when she begs Snape to protect Draco during the final battle is a powerful moment. However, in the books, the relationship between Narcissa and Lucius is fraught with tension. Lucius's obsession with the Dark Lord and his fear of Voldemort's power have created a rift between the two. Narcissa's quiet rebellion against her husband's loyalty to Voldemort is a subtle yet powerful aspect of her character in the books, and her role in the Malfoy family's eventual defection is made far more significant. This tension between Lucius and Narcissa is further explored through their differing perspectives on Draco's safety. Lucius is initially blind to the danger his son faces, caught up in the idea of pure blood superiority and the desire for redemption through service to Voldemort. However, Narcissa's maternal instinct is undeniable, and she is the one who sees the risk to Draco's life before Lucius does. Her intervention in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince when she asks Snape to protect Draco is a pivotal moment in the story. It is a moment where Lucius's inability to see beyond his own pride and fear contrasts sharply with Narcissa's more grounded, protective love for her son. The films gloss over these nuances, instead focusing on action scenes and visual spectacle. Lucius's eventual shift from loyal Death Eater to reluctant ally of Harry and the Order of the Phoenix is not given the attention it deserves. The emotional weight of his choices, the personal sacrifice, and the slow but sure realization that his family's safety is worth more than his allegiance to Voldemort are reduced to fleeting moments that fail to capture the true depth of his transformation. By prioritizing spectacle over substance, the films sacrifice the heart of Lucius Malfoy's character. The internal battles, the nuances of his relationships, and his eventual change of heart are all but lost in favor of action-packed sequences. Lucius's story in the books is not just the tale of a man who chooses between good and evil. It is a tale of redemption, of a man coming to terms with the consequences of his actions and the toll it takes on his family. His evolution is not linear, nor is it simple. It is a slow, painful process marked by moments of self-doubt and the overwhelming love he feels for Draco. It is this complexity that makes Lucius Malfoy one of the most fascinating characters in the Harry Potter universe, but it is also the very complexity that the films fail to capture. The dichotomy between the film's visual appeal and the book's deep emotional exploration is most evident in the portrayal of Lucius Malfoy. While the films may offer a thrilling spectacle, they leave much to be desired in terms of character development. Lucius's journey is one of profound internal struggle, and it is this internal conflict that should have been given more screen time. Ultimately, the films reduce him to a mere antagonist, robbing him of the chance to be seen as a man capable of change and growth. The books, on the other hand, offer a far richer portrait, one that invites us to look beyond the surface and see the person struggling within. Number 19, saving Hermione. One of the most poignant elements of the Harry Potter series is the deep bond of friendship that exists between Harry, Hermione, and Ron. It's a theme that resonates through every book and film, particularly during moments of crisis. A significant turning point in the narrative occurs in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, where Hermione finds herself in dire straits. Yet when we compare the depiction of her rescue in the book to its film adaptation, a striking disparity emerges, one where the emotional depth of the rescue is somewhat lost. While the book lingers on the intricacies of the rescue mission, the film's pacing is quick, and the emotional weight diminishes. This shift from logic to spectacle reveals how the cinematic world often sacrifices subtlety in favor of grandeur. In the book, the rescue of Hermione begins with a long, drawn-out process. Harry and Ron, in their frantic state, are thrust into a difficult decision. They have already encountered danger in their quest to destroy the Horcruxes, but this particular moment, where they realize Hermione is captured by Death Eaters, brings them face to face with the terror of their mission. Both friends are exhausted and weighed down by the heavy burden of their mission, and yet, when Hermione's life is on the line, they are forced to stop and think. It's not just about rushing in to save her, it's about understanding the implications of their actions. This emotional weight lingers throughout the sequence. Harry, in particular, he reflects on how much he depends on Hermione and Ron. His thoughts are clouded by fear, doubt, and the crushing realization that they could lose one of their own. The book also illustrates Harry's internal battle as he struggles to reconcile his desire to save Hermione with the potential consequences of acting too rashly. He knows they are up against formidable enemies, and the urgency of the moment cannot be underestimated. The scene in the book is not merely about rescuing Hermione, it is about understanding the stakes involved. Harry's mind races with conflicting emotions, and it is through his thought process that readers are reminded of the true cost of their quest. This is no longer just a journey to defeat Voldemort, it's about preserving the lives of those who matter most. When Ron joins Harry in the mission to save Hermione, the duo's relationship is tested. Ron, who has often been portrayed as impulsive, is struggling with his own sense of inadequacy. He feels the weight of his role in this dangerous mission, but he also harbors a deep sense of loyalty to his friends. His relationship with Harry, fraught with moments of tension, is finally put to the test in this critical scene. Ron and Harry's mutual respect for one another is what enables them to work together effectively, but it's also clear that Ron's insecurities bubble to the surface. His desire to protect Hermione is evident, but it also speaks to his ongoing struggles with self-doubt. In this scene, Ron, for all his bravado, is just as vulnerable as Harry. It's a moment of raw emotion, one that the book takes the time to explore. Yet, in the film adaptation, the process of their decision-making is significantly shortened. The sequence in the movie, while action-packed, misses the layers of emotion that the book conveys. It's as though the filmmakers, in an effort to maintain a brisk pace, choose spectacle over reflection. The intense deliberation between Harry and Ron in the book is reduced to mere seconds in the film. Instead of experiencing Harry's internal conflict and the gradual build-up of tension, viewers are treated to fast-paced action sequences, complete with flashes of wand movements and daring escapes. While these elements add excitement to the film, they also strip away the emotional depth of the situation. What is left is an adrenaline-fueled rescue mission that lacks the gravity it carries in the book. The film also condenses the friendship between Harry, Ron, and Hermione into brief moments. In the book, the dynamics of their relationship are crucial to the story's emotional core. The journey they embark on isn't just about defeating Voldemort, but about preserving their shared bond. The events in Deathly Hallows often put that bond to the test, and each time it strengthens. In the film, however, these moments are condensed into quick exchanges that miss the underlying tension. For instance, the silent communication between the three friends, especially Harry and Hermione, is evident in the book when they exchange subtle glances and unspoken gestures. And these moments carry a weight that the film struggles to translate. The silent connection that once spoke volumes is often lost in the flurry of action scenes, reducing the emotional depth of their relationship. While the visual spectacle of the rescue in the film certainly grabs attention, it also leaves behind a feeling of emotional detachment. The tension that defines the book is lost in the pursuit of cinematic excitement. It's easy to forget that the most powerful moments of the story are often the quiet ones, the moments of reflection, the glances shared between friends, and the hesitations before taking action. In the book, Harry's decision to rescue Hermione is not simply a split-second choice. It is a culmination of all his fears, all his hopes, and all his doubts. This is what makes the scene so powerful, Harry's decision to save. Hermione reflects not just his loyalty but his belief in the power of friendship. It is a testament to how much he values their bond, and it highlights the personal stakes involved in their quest. In contrast, the film's focus on spectacle often sacrifices the slower, more contemplative moments. The quick pacing of the scene gives the impression that Harry and Ron are moving forward without hesitation, but this undermines the emotional weight of the original scene. The quiet moments that allow the characters to process their emotions are replaced by a swift rescue that lacks the depth found in the book. The rescue of Hermione in the film becomes less about the character's emotional journey and more about the physical feat of saving her. Even the action sequences in the film, though visually stunning, miss the emotional resonance of the book. The tension that builds as Harry and Ron fight to reach Hermione is palpable in the novel, and the threat of danger feels real. The decisions they make are informed by their fears and their love for Hermione, but the film reduces it to mere action. There is no time to explore the deeper motivations behind their actions. Instead of witnessing Harry's inner turmoil, we are presented with a rapid sequence of events that prioritizes spectacle over emotional depth. Furthermore, the film adaptation of Deathly Hallows often leans on visual cues to convey emotional moments. The use of dramatic music, swift cuts, and striking visuals creates a sense of urgency. However, these techniques, while effective in creating excitement, fail to capture the emotional nuances of the book. The film relies on external elements to convey the stakes, but the internal struggles of the characters are lost in the process. This creates a disconnect between the viewers and the characters, making it harder to relate to their emotional journey. The friendship between Harry, Ron, and Hermione is one of the most enduring aspects of the series. It is a bond that transcends the events of the books and films, and it is what makes moments like Hermione's rescue so powerful. In the book, their emotional journey is given the space to unfold, allowing readers to feel the weight of their decisions. In the film, however, the emotional complexity is often sacrificed for the sake of visual spectacle. While the films undoubtedly bring the story to life in a new way, they also lose some of the emotional richness that defines the series. Ultimately, the rescue of Hermione in Deathly Hallows serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of friendship, loyalty, and the personal stakes involved in their journey. While the film version is certainly exciting, it misses the emotional heart of the story that is so integral to the book. The decision-making process, the internal struggles, and the slow build-up of tension all contribute to the emotional depth of the scene. By sacrificing these elements in favor of spectacle, the film version loses the very essence of what makes this moment so impactful in the first place. Number 20. Voldemort as a psychological antagonist. Voldemort, the dark wizard whose very name strikes fear into the hearts of witches and wizards, stands as one of the most iconic antagonists in literary history. But while his cinematic portrayal often emphasizes his external appearance, his pale, snake-like visage and cold, menacing demeanor, the true depth of his character is much more psychological in nature. In the films, Voldemort appears as a straightforward embodiment of evil, driven solely by a desire to conquer the wizarding world. However, in J.K. Rowling's books, his character is revealed to be far more complex, a figure whose psychological motivations go beyond mere lust for power. Voldemort's tactics are built on manipulation, fear, and an obsessive need for control, and these elements make him a far more dangerous antagonist than his film counterpart. Voldemort's fundamental tragedy lies in his inability to understand or experience love. From a young age, he was abandoned by his mother, a fact that shaped his worldview and left an indelible scar on his soul. This sense of abandonment is central to his psychological makeup, and it manifests in his ruthless actions and interactions. As Tom Riddle, he displayed little regard for others, always seeking to elevate himself at the expense of those around him. However, it wasn't just his ambition that set him apart. It was his deep, underlying fear of weakness and death, two elements he equates with the vulnerability he experienced as a child. By rejecting love, Voldemort inadvertently set himself on a path toward becoming a master of fear, using it to control others and impose his will on the wizarding world. Unlike the films, which reduce Voldemort's evil to a desire for domination, the books present him as a character driven by an intense fear of his own mortality. His pursuit of immortality through the creation of Horcruxes is not merely a quest for power, it is an attempt to stave off the inevitable. His fear of death is a psychological coping mechanism, one that leads him to commit unspeakable acts in order to preserve himself. When Harry first learns of Voldemort's Horcruxes, it is clear that these dark objects are not just magical tools, but reflections of Voldemort's fractured psyche. Each Horcrux represents a piece of Voldemort's soul, literally and figuratively compartmentalizing the parts of him that are broken. These fragments are not only magical constructs, but symbols of his profound psychological disintegration. Voldemort's obsession with immortality and his inability to understand the value of life are his greatest weaknesses, making him a deeply flawed and ultimately tragic figure. Furthermore, Voldemort's interactions with others are shaped by a desire for absolute control. His followers, the Death Eaters, are not just loyal to him out of fear, they are also manipulated into believing in his cause. He uses their desires, insecurities, and ambitions to manipulate them into serving his will. Lucius Malfoy, a key figure among the Death Eaters, is one of Voldemort's primary tools for maintaining influence in the wizarding world. However, as the series progresses, it becomes evident that even Lucius, who once wielded significant power, is ultimately subjugated by Voldemort's psychological manipulation. Lucius's loyalty is born out of fear and the desire for personal gain, yet Voldemort treats him with disdain, always maintaining an aura of superiority. This manipulation of his followers underscores Voldemort's understanding of human nature. He recognizes that fear and power can be used to control, but he also understands that his hold on others is tenuous. His paranoia, evident in his treatment of his followers, reveals the fragility of his psychological state. Voldemort's greatest weapon is his ability to manipulate fear. His entire reign of terror is built upon creating a society where fear is pervasive and unchallenged. His use of the unforgivable curses, particularly the Cruciatus curse, is not just a demonstration of magical prowess, it is a tool of psychological domination. By inflicting pain, Voldemort forces his victims into submission, making them fear not only him but also their own inability to escape his grasp. This fear is compounded by his use of the Imperious Curse, which allows him to control others like puppets. The very idea that Voldemort can not only control someone's actions but also their thoughts and feelings speaks to the depth of his psychological control over those who serve him. He knows that fear is a powerful motivator, and he uses it to bind his followers to him in a way that is both emotionally and mentally devastating. Yet it is not just fear that Voldemort manipulates, it is also love. In his warped perception, love is a weakness, something to be eradicated. This belief stems from his own early experiences where he saw love as something that made people vulnerable. His hatred of love, however, becomes his blind spot. He fails to understand that the very thing he despises is the one thing that can ultimately defeat him. Harry Potter, whom he sees as his greatest threat, is the living embodiment of the power of love. Voldemort's failure to grasp the significance of love, particularly in his relationship with Harry, is the key to his eventual downfall. Harry's ability to love and to be loved by those around him makes him immune to Voldemort's most powerful tool, fear. In the final confrontation between the two, it is Harry's ability to love and the love of his friends and family that gives him the strength to triumph over the dark wizard. The psychological manipulation that Voldemort employs also extends to his use of trust. He creates a false sense of loyalty and camaraderie among his followers, but his control over them is based on the knowledge that none of them truly trusts one another. His manipulative tactics ensure that they are all beholden to him, but also fearful of one another. This lack of genuine trust prevents any unity among the Death Eaters, making them more vulnerable to betrayal. Voldemort's own paranoia prevents him from establishing true loyalty within his ranks. He surrounds himself with those who fear him, but this fear prevents them from acting in his best interest. In contrast, Harry, through his bonds with others, is able to create a sense of loyalty that is based on mutual respect and trust, an emotional connection that Voldemort can never understand or replicate. As the series progresses, Voldemort's psychological fragility becomes more apparent. His obsession with blood purity, his intense hatred for Muggleborns, and his desire to rid the world of what he perceives as weaknesses are all reflections of his own inner turmoil. His self-loathing, particularly as it pertains to his half-blood status, fuels his desire to dominate and eradicate those he sees as inferior. His fixation on blood purity is not just an ideological stance, it is a reflection of his own insecurities and need to define himself in opposition to others. Voldemort's inability to reconcile his own identity is a key element of his psychological unraveling, leading to a growing paranoia and an increasing reliance on fear to maintain his power. Ultimately, Voldemort's tragic flaw is his inability to understand human emotions, his psychological disconnect from others, his lack of empathy, and his refusal to acknowledge the power of love all contribute to his eventual downfall. While he is a master of manipulation, his inability to understand the true nature of human connection leaves him vulnerable. It is this psychological dissonance that makes Voldemort not just a physical threat, but a deeply tragic figure. His quest for power, immortality, and control is born from a fear of his own weakness, a fear that ultimately consumes him. The true depth of Voldemort's character lies not in his magical prowess, but in his psychological motivations, making him a far more complex and tragic figure than his cinematic counterpart. Number 21. Lifeless magic. In the Harry Potter films, Lord Voldemort is often depicted as the quintessential villain, a dark force intent on world domination, with an appearance and demeanor that leave little to the imagination. His bald head, red eyes, and snake-like face are unmistakable signs of his evil nature. The films, with their emphasis on action and spectacle, reduce Voldemort to little more than a frightening antagonist who appears only when necessary to fulfill the plot. However, the books offer a much deeper, more complex portrayal of this villain. Voldemort is not merely a malevolent sorcerer bent on control. He is a psychological antagonist whose strategies, beliefs, and motivations are intricately tied to his past, his fears, and his warped view of the world. Voldemort's power is undeniable, but it is his psychological depth that truly sets him apart from other villains. In J.K. Rowling's narrative, Voldemort's past is intricately woven into his identity as a dark wizard. His childhood, marked by abandonment, neglect, and a desperate desire for recognition, formed the foundation of his warped psyche. Born as Tom Riddle, he was a child who never knew love. His mother, Merope Gaunt, died soon after his birth, and his father, Tom Riddle Sr., rejected him even before his birth. The rejection he faced from both parents and the world around him is a formative experience that deeply influenced his later actions. This lack of love and affection played a crucial role in shaping his personality. leaving him with a deep-rooted fear of weakness and dependence. In the books, it becomes clear that Voldemort's desire for power is less about domination for its own sake and more about his attempt to rid himself of vulnerability. His obsession with immortality, his use of Horcruxes to split his soul, is a direct reflection of his fear of death. Voldemort, in his twisted mind, sees death as the ultimate weakness, something to be conquered, not embraced. His fear of mortality leads him to commit unspeakable acts, including the murder of his own soul. In this, Voldemort's pursuit of immortality is not only a quest for power, but also an escape from his own humanity, his fear of being ordinary, his hatred of anything that represents the human condition, love, vulnerability, and mortality. The films, however, do not explore this psychological complexity. Instead, they focus on the spectacle of his power. In the climactic scenes, Voldemort is often seen wielding destructive magic, casting curses, and throwing the wizarding world into chaos. His magical abilities are unquestionably formidable, but they overshadow the deeper conflict that is present in the books. In the films, the psychological battle that rages within Voldemort remains hidden from the audience. His deep-seated fear of love, which is central to his character, is barely touched upon. The book's more nuanced portrayal of his character allows readers to understand that Voldemort's greatest strength, his mastery of fear, ultimately stems from his own deep-seated insecurities. One of the most compelling aspects of Voldemort as a psychological antagonist is his ability to manipulate others. He does not rely solely on his magical prowess to achieve his goals. He also manipulates people's fears, desires, and weaknesses. A key example of this is his relationship with his followers, the Death Eaters. Through them, Voldemort is able to exert control over the wizarding world, not only by using his power to intimidate them, but by exploiting their own psychological vulnerabilities. Many Death Eaters are drawn to him because they fear his power, while others are motivated by their own personal ambitions. In Voldemort's world, loyalty is not based on trust or mutual respect, but on fear. He uses fear as both a tool and a weapon to ensure obedience. Voldemort's ability to manipulate extends beyond his followers. He is also a master of psychological warfare, using people's emotions to further his control. One of the most significant examples of this is his relationship with Harry Potter. In the books, it is revealed that Voldemort's obsession with Harry is not just a result of his desire to kill the child who survived his curse, but also because of the emotions that Harry represents. Harry embodies the one thing Voldemort cannot comprehend: love. When Voldemort tries to kill Harry, he is not just trying to eliminate a threat, he is also attempting to destroy something that he cannot understand or control. His inability to grasp the power of love and its ability to protect Harry is a psychological blind spot that ultimately leads to his downfall. The films, however, reduce Voldemort's relationship with Harry to a mere battle of wills. While the films show the conflict between them, they fail to delve deeply into the psychological dynamics at play. In the books, Harry's survival is not just a result of his bravery, but of the love that his mother, Lily, bestowed upon him before her death. This love, which Voldemort fails to understand, is the ultimate protection against his power. The idea that Voldemort's failure to comprehend love is his greatest weakness is a theme that resonates throughout the books, but is largely lost in the films. Voldemort's manipulation of fear and his obsession with power are also evident in his treatment of his followers. He is not interested in cultivating loyalty or respect. Instead, he uses fear to keep his Death Eaters in line. His leadership is based on terror rather than trust, and this is evident in his relationship with individuals like Severus Snape and Draco Malfoy. Snape, who is constantly torn between his loyalty to Dumbledore and his servitude to Voldemort is a key example of the way Voldemort exploits people's weaknesses. Snape's love for Lily Potter, which Voldemort is unable to comprehend, becomes his greatest asset in ultimately defeating him. Voldemort's inability to understand Snape's complex motivations leads to his eventual defeat. Draco Malfoy's relationship with Voldemort also highlights the psychological manipulation at play. Draco is initially reluctant to follow Voldemort's orders, but Voldemort uses his family's past and his father's debts to manipulate him into doing his bidding. The pressure and fear placed on Draco are evident throughout the series, particularly in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, where Draco is forced to carry out a mission that he is morally opposed to. Voldemort's use of Draco as a pawn in his larger game is a chilling reminder of the way he manipulates the vulnerabilities of others for his own gain. The films, however, simplify these complex relationships into more straightforward power struggles. The deeper psychological undercurrents that define Voldemort's interactions with others are not fully explored. In the book series, Voldemort's relationships with those around him are far more complex, rooted in fear, manipulation, and an inability to understand or embrace love. These elements make him a much more compelling antagonist, not just because of his magical power, but because of his psychological depth. While the films focus on Voldemort's magical prowess, it is his psychological flaws that make him a truly dangerous villain. His inability to understand love, his obsession with power, and his manipulation of fear all contribute to his downfall. In the books, we see a Voldemort who is not merely a villain, but a tragic figure whose fear of weakness and death leads him to make choices that ultimately destroy him. This psychological complexity is what makes Voldemort more than just a typical villain. He is a deeply flawed character whose motivations and actions are driven by fear, insecurity, and a distorted view of the world around him. The films, in their pursuit of spectacle, fail to capture the true depth of this character, leaving behind only a shadow of the true psychological antagonist that Voldemort is in the books. Number 22, Dark Magic and its Consequences. In the magical world of Harry Potter, the concept of magic is intricate and far from perfect. J.K. Rowling carefully constructed a universe where magic is governed by its own set of rules, limitations, and costs. However, when it comes to translating this depth of magic onto the silver screen, much of its nuance is lost. In the books, magic is a double-edged sword, a force that must be wielded with careful consideration. Yet in the films, magic often becomes a spectacle, stripped of its complexities and limitations. The result is a form of magic that feels devoid of life, a tool used for effect rather than for its intended purpose within the narrative. One of the clearest examples of this phenomenon can be seen with the spell Petrificus Totalis. In the books, this spell is portrayed as something much more unpredictable and dangerous than it appears in the films. While it does cause complete paralysis, the consequences of using it are often not as neatly tied up as they seem. In fact, the spell can be difficult to control, and its effects are not always permanent. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, when Harry uses Petrificus Totalis to stop Neville from alerting Filch to their midnight escapade, it is not an easy victory. The spell causes Neville to freeze up, but he later recovers his momentary paralysis, not a permanent defeat. The use of this spell is a reminder of the unpredictability of magic and the potential for unintended consequences. But when the same spell is depicted in the films, particularly in Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban, the magic feels far more like a convenient tool. In the movie, Harry casts Petrificus Totalis with little hesitation or uncertainty, and the result is immediate and absolute. Neville's paralysis is depicted as a clean, simple solution to the situation, with no after effects or complications. The spell, instead of feeling like a dangerous and imperfect force, becomes a simple plot device designed solely to advance the story. This transformation of magic from something complex and uncertain into something that is merely functional is a key example. Of the lifelessness of magic in the films, this reduction of magic to a spectacle is further exemplified in the way spells are portrayed in the movies. In the books, magic requires concentration, intention, and often a deep understanding of the forces at play. Spells are not simply words to be spoken, they are a reflection of the caster's will and the caster's understanding of magical principles. The wand itself in Rowling's universe is not just an object of convenience, it is a conduit through which the wizard channels their magic. The spells are often described as having a particular rhythm or feeling to them, as though they are an extension of the caster's inner magic. However, in the films, spells are often reduced to little more than flashiness. They are frequently shown as bursts of light or sweeping gestures, with little attention paid to the more subtle aspects of casting. The focus is placed on the visual spectacle of the magic itself, rather than on the deeper understanding of its mechanics. The difference is stark when comparing, for example, the way Expelliarmus is depicted in the book versus the film. In the book, Harry's disarming charm is a tool of defense, a skill that requires practice and precision. But in the films, it becomes almost a signature move for Harry, a simple flick of the wrist that knocks his opponents off their feet. The spell loses its significance and becomes a trope, a magical gesture that carries little weight beyond its immediate effect. In contrast, the books often show magic as something that must be learned and mastered. The first time Harry casts Expelliarmus, it is not a flawless success. It requires practice and concentration, and even then Harry is not always able to execute it perfectly. It takes time and experience for him to fully grasp the power behind the spell. Yet in the films, the learning curve is largely eliminated. Spells are cast with ease, and their effects are immediate, creating an unrealistic sense of mastery over magic that diminishes its complexity. The same trend can be observed with the use of the Patronus charm. In the books, casting a Patronus is a difficult and personal achievement, one that requires immense concentration and emotional strength. It is a skill that takes Harry years to master, and even when he is successful, his Patronus is not initially very powerful. His first attempt at casting the charm results in a small, weak form, a sign of his growing ability, but also of the challenge still ahead. It is not until later, when Harry has matured emotionally, that his Patronus takes on its full strength and form. The Patronus becomes a symbol of Harry's growth and his ability to protect others, a magical achievement that comes at a personal cost. In the films, however, the Patronus charm is often depicted with little to no struggle. The moment when Harry conjures his full Patronus in the Prisoner of Azkaban movie is visually stunning, but it lacks the emotional weight that the scene holds in the book. Harry's journey to mastering the spell is skipped over, and the Patronus appears as a quick, magical fix to the danger at hand. The spell, in this case, loses its deeper meaning, becoming just another piece of the magical toolbox that can be used at will. This shift from complex magic to easy spectacle is not just a problem for the Harry Potter films, but for many film adaptations of fantasy literature. The desire to create visually appealing sequences often comes at the expense of the rich inner workings that make the magic in the books so compelling. By reducing magic to flashy effects, the films miss the opportunity to explore the emotional and intellectual depth that is integral to the wizarding world. The result is a version of magic that feels detached from the world it is meant to inhabit, a tool that serves the plot rather than the story. The cost of this reduction is particularly noticeable in moments where magic is used in dire situations. In the book, when Harry is faced with danger, the magic he uses often comes with consequences. The use of the Cruciatus curse is one example. In the books, this curse, which causes intense pain, is a dark and dangerous form of magic, one that leaves lasting scars on those who use it. It is a representation of the dark side of magic, a force that corrupts and harms. Yet in the films, the curse is used with little regard for its impact. It is a tool of power used by Bellatrix Lestrange and others without the same weight of moral consideration that the books convey. In the Goblet of Fire, when Harry competes in the Triwizard Tournament, magic becomes more than just a spectacle of power. The tasks that he faces require skill, preparation, and an understanding of magical principles. Yet when it comes to the film adaptation, these tasks are often reduced to quick, dramatic moments. The underwater task, for example, is reduced to a series of action-packed scenes with little regard for the intricacies of the magical solutions Harry must employ. The film focuses on the action, but in doing so it loses the deeper themes of growth and struggle that are present in the book. The films, while undoubtedly entertaining, often fail to capture the complexity of magic that is so central to the Harry Potter series. The magic in the books is not just a tool, it is a reflection of the characters' inner struggles, their growth, and their understanding of the world around them. When this magic is reduced to nothing more than special effects, it loses its soul. The lifelessness of magic in the films speaks to a larger issue, one that affects not just the way magic is depicted, but also the way the characters' journeys are presented. In the end, magic in the Harry Potter films, while visually impressive, often fails to live up to the depth and complexity it has in the books. Number 23, time and its manipulations. In the magical world of Harry Potter, time is far from a mere concept. It's a powerful force that shapes destinies, actions, and consequences. The notion of manipulating time is explored deeply throughout J.K. Rowling's series, especially through the Time Turner, a magical device introduced in The Prisoner of Azkaban and revisited in The Deathly Hallows. Time in its purest form is both fascinating and dangerous. While its manipulation is portrayed as a key tool in advancing the plot, especially in the films, the deeper philosophical implications are often lost in the transition from page to screen. The Time Turner, initially introduced as a simple object to allow Hermione to attend multiple classes at once, soon reveals itself to be much more than a tool for convenience. In the books, the dangers of using such a device are emphasized in every instance of its use. Hermione herself is often stressed by the burden of having to maintain the illusion of time being undisturbed. Her attempt to use the Time Turner in The Prisoner of Azkaban is done with extreme caution, as she understands how easily things could go awry. The idea that one small change could have disastrous effects is a constant reminder in the narrative, and this underpins the consequences of tampering with time. Yet when Harry and Hermione use the Time Turner to save Sirius Black and Buckbeak, the risks become clear. They don't merely revisit moments from the past, they actively alter the course of events. The scene in the Shrieking Shack where Harry and Hermione are on the brink of rescuing Sirius is a perfect example of this delicate manipulation of time. In this instance, the idea of what if becomes a tangible force as both characters are forced to confront the fragility of the past and their role in rewriting it. The book allows readers to see the weight of this responsibility as they experience the intense pressure to restore balance, showcasing the moral complexity of their actions. The tension in The Prisoner of Azkaban surrounding the Time Turner and its implications is largely absent from the film adaptation. While the Time Turner itself is used as a plot device in the movie, its deeper, more cautionary role is diminished. The film adaptation, focusing on spectacle simplifies the notion of time travel to a more convenient, less morally complex element. The idea of Harry and Hermione making a bold leap backward in time to rescue Sirius seems almost effortless in the film, with little attention paid to the potential consequences. This alteration of time, while visually exciting, lacks the sense of tension that was built up in the book, where every second counts and where the potential for chaos looms large. As time manipulation returns in the Deathly Hallows, particularly with the revelation of the Resurrection Stone and the return of the Elder Wand, we once again encounter the central theme of time's dangers. Harry's encounter with the Resurrection Stone is especially poignant. He doesn't seek to alter time in a grand, plot-altering way. Rather, he seeks the comfort of revisiting the past. But even here, the philosophical message about the inevitability of death and the need to move forward is clear. The Resurrection Stone allows Harry to see those he has lost, but it's a hollow experience. The ghosts of his past, even when they appear to him, cannot provide him with a tangible solution or comfort. Instead, Harry must confront his own mortality, a theme central to the series. By choosing to leave the Resurrection Stone behind, Harry accepts that the past cannot be altered, and that his destiny lies in moving forward. In contrast, the films, while they do show the use of the Resurrection Stone, again simplify its significance. The visual representation of the stone's magic is stunning, but it fails to capture the emotional complexity of Harry's choice. In the books, Harry's decision to let go of the stone is fraught with meaning. It represents not just his acceptance of death, but his acknowledgement that life is a journey that cannot be rewound. The filmmakers choose to highlight the emotional spectacle of the scene, focusing on the visual impact rather than the deeper philosophical undertones that the book carefully conveys. What is missing in the film is the introspection that Harry undergoes as he faces the choice between clinging to the past and letting go to embrace the future. This philosophical loss is not limited to The Prisoner of Azkaban or the Deathly Hallows alone. Time manipulation appears throughout the series, but the films, while visually captivating, often reduce its complexity. One of the most significant consequences of manipulating time is its tendency to erase the need for characters to truly face the consequences of their actions. In the books, when Harry and his friends make mistakes, they must deal with the ramifications. They do not have the luxury of resetting the clock to escape those consequences. Time in the books is an unyielding force, forcing characters to take responsibility for their actions. But in the films, the ease of magical devices like the time turner can at times give the false impression that actions can be reversed with little cost. This is most noticeable when time is manipulated as a means to avoid danger or escape punishment, a tool of convenience rather than a moral dilemma. Another example of how time manipulation is simplified in the films can be seen with the character of Professor Dumbledore. Throughout the series, Dumbledore's knowledge of time and its potential manipulations is hinted at, but in the films, his role as a wise, almost omniscient figure is accentuated. His understanding of time, while present in the books, is often presented in a more mystic and distant light in the films. Dumbledore's use of time is not a mere academic pursuit, but a philosophical one. His involvement with the time turners and his awareness of how time must be respected is one of the key aspects of his character. However, this is lost in translation in the films, where Dumbledore's profound understanding is often reduced to an academic, somewhat mystical presence, leaving behind the deeper implications of his choices. The theme of time manipulation extends beyond the time turner and the Resurrection Stone. It is also present in the very structure of the series. Throughout the books, Harry is constantly confronted with the passing of time. Each year represents a new cycle, with new challenges, growing friendships, and evolving threats. The passage of time is a key component of Harry's journey, and his growth as a person is directly tied to his ability to confront the future without relying on shortcuts. The idea that time cannot be cheated or avoided is a constant message in the series, but this is often undermined in the films, where the spectacle of magic takes precedence over the subtleties of time's influence. In The Goblet of Fire, the Triwizard Tournament serves as another example of how the manipulation of time is both a plot device and a moral lesson. The events of the tournament, culminating in the return of Lord Voldemort, are set in motion by a complex series of time-bound events. The manipulation of time, in this case through the use of the Goblet of Fire and its connection to the Dark Lord's plan, is portrayed as a dangerous and chaotic force. However, in the film adaptation, the focus shifts away from the complexity of these events, emphasizing the spectacle of the tournament itself, rather than the underlying implications of the time-bound nature of the plot. The use of time manipulation in the Harry Potter films, in its focus on visual spectacle, often misses the point of its deeper, more philosophical consequences. The novels, by contrast, use time as a narrative tool to explore responsibility, destiny, and the acceptance of mortality. The film adaptations, by simplifying the concept of time manipulation into a convenient plot device, rob the audience of the opportunity to reflect on the moral lessons that time's manipulation teaches in the books. Time, as both a magical and philosophical force, deserves more than the flashy magic tricks that are often shown on screen. It is a tool for growth and understanding. Not just a mechanism for escaping peril. Number 24, heroes with predictable development. In the world of Harry Potter, characters evolve through a labyrinth of challenges, choices, and growth. However, this evolution, while complex in the books, often transforms into something more predictable and simplified in the films. One of the most glaring examples of this transformation is the shift in how the characters of Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger are portrayed. The richness of their inner lives in the books, their deep-seated fears, and the subtle complexities of their evolving relationship get lost in the cinematic adaptations. The audience is left with the caricatured versions of these beloved characters: Ron, the perpetual sidekick with insecurities, and Hermione, the ever-efficient and stern bookworm. While these portrayals are not inaccurate, they miss the layers that J.K. Rowling so carefully wove into their personalities. Take Ron Weasley, for instance. In the books, Ron's journey is not just about being Harry's loyal friend or comic relief. His story is one of self-doubt and the struggle to live up to the expectations set by his older brothers and the famous Harry Potter. Ron is the youngest son in a large family, constantly living in the shadow of his siblings. This dynamic plays a crucial role in his character development. In the early books, Ron harbors an overwhelming sense of inferiority. He often compares himself to his brothers, Percy, Bill, Charlie, and especially Fred and George, and feels he can never measure up. This sense of inadequacy is emphasized during a scene in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, where he discusses how nothing he does can ever seem to surpass his brother's achievements. "I'm just Ron Weasley, the youngest, the one who will never be the hero," he reflects in his thoughts. It's a poignant insight into his psyche, one that paints a picture of a character in turmoil, trying to reconcile his self-worth in a family where heroism seems to be a family trait. Yet despite his internal struggles, Ron grows. The films, by contrast, focus less on these subtleties, reducing him to the bumbling, awkward friend who relies on his loyalty to Harry to define him. The humour that comes with his character, though not absent in the books, does not define him. In fact, his humour often serves as a coping mechanism, a way to deflect the deeper emotions he doesn't fully understand or know how to express. His moments of self-reflection, as seen in The Goblet of Fire, when he contemplates his jealousy over Harry's accomplishments, are critical to understanding his character. He wonders if his friendship with Harry is solely defined by their shared adventures, or if there is more to their relationship. But the films, with their emphasis on visual spectacle, strip away much of Ron's inner journey. They opt for the easy laugh, the stereotype of the unsure and often foolish friend, which inadvertently diminishes his character's complexity. Hermione Granger's portrayal in the films suffers a similar fate. In the books, Hermione is not just a know-it-all, she is a young woman grappling with the immense pressure to prove her worth. As a Muggle-born witch, she is keenly aware of the prejudice she faces in the wizarding world. Her constant need to excel, to be the smartest person in the room, stems not just from a love of knowledge, but from a deep-seated fear of being rejected or diminished because of her blood status. In The Goblet of Fire, Hermione's efforts to help house elves, even when it's not fashionable, show a side of her that goes beyond the books and the spells. It demonstrates her drive to stand up for what's right, despite the opinions of others. This commitment to justice is deeply tied to her own struggles with identity and belonging. She doesn't just fight for knowledge or grades, she fights for equality, for her place in the world. However, the films often reduce her to the archetype of the intelligent girl, the one who always has the answer. While this is certainly part of her character, it doesn't capture the nuanced, sometimes fragile Hermione who fears her worth might not extend beyond her intellect. For instance, in The Order of the Phoenix, when Hermione is organizing the DA, Dumbledore's army, her personal insecurities start to show she is not just a brilliant student. She is a young woman trying to find her place among the boys, and often struggling with the fact that despite her brilliance, she is still seen as a girl by many. When Ron teases her for her overachieving nature, it triggers an internal conflict for Hermione. She wants to be seen as more than just the brain. The films, however, seem to bypass this vulnerability, focusing primarily on her determined, almost superwoman character. The battle of balancing her fierce intellect with the emotional roller coaster of growing up in a world that doesn't always value her in full is often lost in the rush of action sequences and visual effects. When it comes to Harry, the main protagonist, the film adaptations often struggle with presenting his internal evolution with the same depth as the books. The films, constrained by their running time and the need to appeal to a broader audience, often gloss over the subtleties of Harry's emotional growth. While Harry's internal turmoil regarding the weight of his destiny and the burden of being the chosen one is explored in the books, the films, especially the earlier ones, don't give enough time to show how these thoughts weigh on him. His struggles with fame, the constant comparisons to his parents, and his desire for a sense of normalcy get reduced to a few poignant moments, but don't delve deeply into his psychological evolution. His confrontation with the idea of sacrificing himself, as seen in The Deathly Hallows, where he must face the possibility of his own death for the greater good, is framed as a heroic choice, but the emotional toll it takes on Harry is not fully explored. Moreover, the films frequently simplify the relationships between the trio. The bond between Harry, Hermione and Ron is central to the series, and while it's presented as a close friendship in the movies, the depth of their interactions is often lost. In the books, these relationships are tested in significant ways. For example, in The Half-Blood Prince, the growing distance between Harry and Ron over the issue of Fleur Delacour and Ginny Weasley's budding relationship adds complexity to their friendship. There's a palpable sense of tension between them as they navigate their teenage years and romantic interests. Yet in the films, the focus shifts away from these emotional conflicts, opting instead for spectacle. The moments of reconciliation between them, which are crucial to their development as individuals and as friends, are often condensed or overlooked in favour of action sequences or larger plot points. Even more striking is how the films often bypass the importance of the characters' family dynamics, especially the Weasleys. The strength of the Weasley family is one of the cornerstones of the Harry Potter series, providing Harry with a surrogate family that teaches him about love, loyalty, and sacrifice. In the books, Ron's relationship with his family, particularly with his brothers, adds layers to his character. His interactions with his parents, especially when he feels overlooked in favor of his older brothers, are key to understanding his emotional struggles. However, in the films, these relationships are glossed over, reducing the Weasley family to a warm, supportive, but somewhat generic background. The depth of the familial tension that Ron feels and the way it influences his growth is lost in the rush to focus on the central plot and Harry's journey. Ultimately, the Harry Potter films, while beloved for their spectacle and visual storytelling, often strip away the complexity and depth of character development found in the books. The internal crises, the moral choices, and the gradual evolution of characters like Ron, Hermione, and even Harry are often simplified into predictable arcs. The films, while enjoyable and faithful to the core story, sacrifice the quieter, more introspective moments that make the books a rich tapestry of growth, self-doubt, and eventual triumph. In doing so, they inadvertently reduce the multidimensional characters of the books into two-dimensional figures, making their journeys appear far more straightforward than they truly are. Number 25. Friends and Enemies. In the world of Harry Potter, friendship and enmity are far from simple concepts. They are fraught with layers of complexity, often defined by a web of historical context, internal conflicts, and personal growth. The relationship between Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy is one of the most nuanced, and it stands as a perfect example of how these themes are handled differently in the books and films. In J.K. Rowling's novels, the connection between Harry and Draco is not just a battle of good versus evil, but a reflection of the moral dilemmas, familial expectations, and personal insecurities that shape their characters. However, the film adaptations strip away these subtleties, turning Draco Malfoy into little more than a caricature of a villain, while simplifying the deeper, more compelling struggles of his character. One of the most glaring differences between the book and film portrayals of Draco Malfoy is his internal conflict. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Draco's character is undergoing an emotional and moral crisis, which is essential to his development. He is forced into a situation where he must either align himself with Voldemort and carry out an unforgivable task, or betray his own principles and family. In the book, this conflict is portrayed with depth and nuance. Draco is not inherently evil. Instead, he is a product of his environment, his upbringing, by a father who is a fervent supporter of the Dark Lord. Throughout the novel, we see Draco's struggle with fear, guilt, and loyalty. The pressure placed on him is immense, and his gradual descent into uncertainty is palpable. In contrast, the films reduce Draco's internal turmoil to a few fleeting moments of hesitation. His confrontation with Harry in the Astronomy Tower is presented more as a moment of suspense rather than a culmination of a long and difficult moral struggle. This simplification strips away the depth of Draco's character arc. The films focus on the dramatic confrontation, but they fail to capture the complexity of Draco's internal conflict. The moral greyness of his position is ignored, leaving him as just another antagonist in Harry's journey. Another crucial aspect of Draco's character in the books is his relationship with his family, particularly with his father, Lucius Malfoy. Lucius is portrayed as a powerful figure in the wizarding world, and his influence on Draco is undeniable. Yet, as the story unfolds, Draco begins to realize that his father's actions have led to dire consequences for their family. The Malfoy fortune is threatened, and Draco finds himself caught between his loyalty to his father and his growing understanding of the danger and moral corruption that Voldemort represents. This dynamic is far more intricate in the books, with Draco often questioning the values that he has been taught. His relationship with his mother, Narcissa, also plays a pivotal role in his development. Narcissa's concern for her son's safety and her subtle defiance of Voldemort's demands add another layer to Draco's internal battle. However, in the films, the Malfoy family dynamics are largely glossed over. Lucius is shown as a cold and distant figure, while Narcissa's protective instincts are only briefly touched upon. The films focus primarily on Draco's role as a student at Hogwarts and his antagonistic relationship with Harry. While the films do include moments where Draco's loyalty is questioned, they fail to explore the complexity of his emotional and moral growth. His relationship with his parents becomes secondary, and his character loses much of the depth that is so central in the books. The idea of friendship is also portrayed differently in the books compared to the films. In the novels, Harry's friendships with Ron and Hermione are central to his character, but they are also tested in various ways. In the Order of the Phoenix, Harry's emotional turmoil is exacerbated by the sense of isolation he feels despite being surrounded by friends. His struggle to open up to others, his doubts about his place in the fight against Voldemort, and his anger at the way he is treated by authority figures create tension within the trio. Yet despite these challenges, the bond between Harry, Ron, and Hermione remains strong. Their friendship is not without its flaws, but it is rooted in loyalty, trust, and mutual support. In the films, however, this sense of complexity is often lost. While the trio's bond is evident, the films do not delve as deeply into the emotional intricacies of their friendship. The films often reduce their relationship to a simple formula of together in adversity, and while that is certainly part of their story, it overlooks the way in which their friendship develops and evolves over time. The tension between Harry and Ron in The Goblet of Fire, for instance, is pivotal in showing the vulnerabilities in their friendship. However, in the film, this conflict is minimized and the emotional weight of the moment is lessened. Similarly, Hermione's struggles with her own insecurities and feelings of inadequacy are not explored as thoroughly as they are in the books. When it comes to enemies, the films also adopt a much more dichotomous approach, where characters are either clearly good or clearly bad. The Malfoys, for example, are presented in the films as the quintessential villains, with Draco as their main representative. This simplification works for the fast-paced, action-oriented nature of the films, but fails to capture the shades of grey that make these characters so compelling in the books. The films present Draco as a one-dimensional antagonist, especially in his role as a foil to Harry. But in the books, Draco's relationship with Harry is more complicated. Harry's animosity towards Draco is not merely the result of Draco's actions, it also stems from Harry's own experiences and his desire to prove himself in a world that often seems hostile. Draco's hatred of Harry, on the other hand, is rooted in his upbringing and his perception of Harry as a threat to his family's status. In the books, Draco is presented as a product of his circumstances, his father's influence, and his own insecurities. While he often acts out of malice, his actions are also shaped by fear, pride, and a desire to maintain the status quo. This makes him a more relatable, if still morally questionable, character. However, in the films, this complexity is often lost, and Draco becomes a mere obstacle in Harry's journey, a character whose development is overshadowed by the need for a villain. The final example of how friendship and enmity are simplified in the films can be seen in the relationship between Severus Snape and Harry. In the books, Snape is a character whose true motivations are only fully understood in the final moments of the series. His complicated history with Harry's parents, particularly with Lily Potter, and his role as a double agent in the war against Voldemort create a profound internal conflict within him. Snape's relationship with Harry is fraught with tension, but it is also deeply intertwined with his feelings of guilt, love, and duty. In the films, however, Snape's role is often reduced to that of a mysterious dark figure whose true allegiance is hidden. The emotional complexity of his character is watered down, and his ultimate sacrifice is made to seem more like a plot twist rather than the culmination of a long and painful journey. The films do not fully capture the tragedy of Snape's life and his relationship with Harry, which is one of the most poignant and compelling elements of the books. The tension between spectacle and logic in the Harry Potter films is evident in the way that characters and their relationships are simplified for the sake of entertainment. While the films succeed in creating a visually captivating world, they often lose the depth and complexity of the original novels. The relationships between friends and enemies are reduced to clear-cut dynamics with little room for the moral ambiguity and emotional growth that make the books so compelling. In the end, the films may be more accessible and enjoyable for audiences seeking thrills and spectacle, but they miss the opportunity to explore the true emotional depth of J.K. Rowling's characters.